Hello again. I am Colin Wallace Jr., and I talk about businesses that impact you. So that can be retail, consumer, tech, you name it. We'll talk about it right here. So, like, comment, subscribe, download all that good stuff. And let's not waste any time. Let's get into it. So, we talked last week about commercial real estate, and I wanted to dive a layer deeper into specifically department stores because I feel like that's kind of a weird, subsector that has had a lot of struggles even before COVID. And now you look at where we are post COVID, and you're seeing places like Nordstrom pulling out of Canada. Eaton's had their struggles, JC Penney, Sears, the list goes on. And, from the industry articles that I've been reading, this industry has been negative pre-COVID. It's even more negative now. So, what's it going to take to get department stores back to, their former glory? And it's interesting because on paper, they seem like a great idea, right? You've got all these, great brands, all your favorite brands under one roof, one-stop shop. You can get everything you need in one go. But again, over recent years, it just has not been working out. And look, like I'll put it on the table right now. I think as things stand, I think this business model is completely unviable. I don't think department stores are going to be around long term if things, again, stay the way they are right now. So if things change, and maybe if some of the things that we'll talk about in a minute get it implemented, who knows, things might change. But for now, I don't see it. Okay, so before we get into some of the strategies that we can use to, help this industry out, let's just get into a couple of reasons why I think that department stores are just going out of business. And one is really just the shift in consumer spending habits, right? So we talked about this last week. This is kind of the e-commerce point, right? Growing at a rate of about 10% a year. And people still go to department stores here and there, but it's not like before, right? Like you're not going to go there, browse for hours, come out with a bunch of bags. The average person isn't doing that, right? If they go to a department store, it's because they went on the website first, they found that store has what they're looking for, and they're going to check it out, try before they buy, or they're going to pick it up, or it's an easy way to get into the mall, by walking through that store, or, whatever happens to be. It's just not like it was before where, you're going in there and you're spending hours and trying a bunch of different stuff on and coming out with a bunch of different pieces of clothing or, household goods or whatever happens to be. Like things have just changed, right? Two is that, given that decreased traffic, the costs are still there. These spaces are huge. You look at your local, again, Sears, JC Penney, Eaton's, Nordstrom, you name it. The footprint is so large. And even though they're getting a discount by being an anchor tenant, it's still a lot of money to pay for a lot of space. And it's not just the space you have to pay for, it's all the utilities and the staff, because, a smaller store, if there's minimal foot traffic, you can get away with having one, maybe two employees, kind of holding down the fort there. But if you've got a massive store, even if there's not really anybody in there shopping, you still kind of have to have a certain baseline level of staff to at least make it look like it's not a ghost town, right? So all these costs kind of add up, and then keeping inventory for all of those items for all these different departments, it's just a very expensive model if you're not having the same type of foot traffic that you were before. So then three, and we all know this one, this kind of fast fashion revolution that we've been seeing, your Zara's, your H&M's, all that sort of thing, where, they can kind of come out with new ideas on an almost weekly basis, and a big, I'll use the word clunky kind of department store, it's hard for them to keep up, right? So, even if you're looking for, a certain, Gucci shirt or whatever happens to be, you're probably more likely to go to the actual Gucci store or whichever branded store it is that you're looking for. You're probably more likely to go to that store, that website, as opposed to the department store where they might not have the full stock. They might have last season's stock. It's not going to be the same experience that you'd be looking for, especially for some of those higher end items, which unfortunately is kind of where department stores have wanted to play. They've wanted to play in that kind of mid to upper tier bracket. And, I think more and more you're seeing that people would rather go to that actual brand's store or website rather than the department store. And that then kind of leads into the next point where, as a department store, it's tough to have your own unique identity because you're kind of housing all these different brands that all stand on their own 2 feet, and then they're all kind of under your, physical housing. But what's your kind of unique identity that you're bringing to the table for a potential consumer, right? So because of that, it's kind of, you don't really build that kind of brand loyalty or affinity to Nordstrom, right? You build that to the brands that you're buying at Nordstrom, right? So it's just a little bit more difficult for these companies to stand out and really have a loyal customer base that can really count on them for a unique experience or whatever it happens to be, right? And then, last but not least, the obvious one, just global events like COVID and that sort of thing, just kind of reducing foot traffic and kind of just keeping people at home or out of stores in that sense, or just really kind of changing the way that we think about that. And obviously right now too, you've got additional pressure with, inflation and a potential recession. And, consumers are just in this bit of a different space where, again, we talked about this last time, but, instead of spending all that money on a shirt or, a piece of, an item for their house, they'd rather just go out and spend time with their friends and, go on a vacation or all those things that we couldn't do, 3 years ago that now we can do. You're seeing that traffic pick up for those types of items, services and experiences, as opposed to fancy items. Maybe part of that too is kind of the sustainability or, just a bit of a generational trend. And, I'm seeing a lot of people talking about thrifting and that sort of thing now. So, kind of that old mindset of I'm going to go out and spend a lot of money on a lot of fancy, expensive clothes. Maybe that's a little bit different now and we're just not seeing it as much. And that's kind of hurt the, department store industry. Okay, so what can department stores do to turn things around, right? Again, we talked about all the reasons why things are rough for them right now. Let's see what we can do to turn things around and fix things. So I think the number one thing is obviously embracing e-commerce, right? And most stores have done this. So this part is less of a concern, but you always want to make sure that you're excelling and improving as much as you can in this area, just because it's so important, right? So kind of, that buzzword of omni-channel. So being able to buy something online, return it in store, or buy it in store, return it through a box in the mail, and just really making an efficient, seamless experience from phone to desktop to physical in store. Those types of things are super important nowadays, just because of how much shopping is done online. Even if the final purchase is in store, a lot of times the customer has looked at that item or they've breezed your website a couple times. And it's important to make sure that, you're able to kind of track and follow and really make a bespoke experience that connects those two worlds. So number two then would be kind of building on that is, once the customer is in the store, how can you make experiences that are unique and really sell them on like, okay, I'm not just here to buy, this Calvin Klein pair of jeans. I'm here because I like this store and I'm connected to this store. And that's kind of the uniqueness of what's bringing me in here. It's not just I'm here for this pair of pants and I'm here for that brand. You want to make it where the person is coming to your store because they're connected with that store, not the brands underneath. So there's a number of ways that you could go about that, and maybe a couple examples. Maybe it's a bit tricky because Nordstrom's been trying different things. They've got this Nordstrom local concept where it's kind of more smaller little outpost stores where it's more focused on kind of pickups and returns and alterations and that sort of thing. Macy's has a concept as well where it's almost like taking a magazine and making almost like a real life experience. They call it the Macy's story concept, but just being creative about these in-store experiences and things that can kind of really help to bring loyalty to the actual store as opposed to the brands that are just housed within the store, because all of these different brands are stepping up their game on an almost daily basis to get you to build more of a connection with their individual brand. So the better they do a job of that, the less you need the middleman of the department store to get access to your favorite items, right? So the next one then, again, just personalization and targeting, right? So once I walk into whatever department store, maybe just having things that I can scan and, look into certain items. And once I start doing that, they know, oh, Colin's here. Colin's, his likes are, X, Y, and Z. His dislikes are A, B, and C, whatever it happens to be, right? Like just really knowing who I am and building connection with me, as opposed to allowing me to go in there and build a connection with arguably your competitors. All those brands underneath are now competing with you for retail space, for foot traffic, for and for dollars, because I can go and buy those items at their store instead, right? So just getting better at that is a huge component of what I think can make department stores successful, is really just dialing in on personalization, targeting, and building a connection with me, as opposed to just kind of housing all these brands and letting them take my attention from you. And again, we're seeing a lot of these, tie together. The next point is really around kind of zeroing in on a handful of key values and target markets, and really focusing on that rather than trying to be a bit too broad and a bit too, all things to all people kind of thing. So, if you're sports focused, or if you're luxury focused, or whatever happens to be, even luxury is kind of a broad umbrella, a bunch of different ages and demographics and all that sort of thing. So I think if you really kind of pick a niche or target market, or almost a vibe that you're going for with these stores and with these concepts, yes, you might alienate some people, but you'll build an even deeper connection with whichever target market that happens to be. And hopefully you can kind of turn things around by getting more dollars out of fewer people, as opposed to fewer dollars out of what was once more people, but is now also fewer people too, right? So it's really a challenge trying to figure out what that right balance is between being broad and being focused. And I think individual brands are able to do that better because they're just more focused by default, right? They've got one brand to focus on, whereas a department store has 100 brands under one roof, and you're trying to cater to what everybody who buys those brands would want. And sometimes they're two completely different types of people, right? So, how can you do a better job of really finding out what are those few brands, markets, values that we really want to center on? And maybe we'll host those brands and we'll exclude a bunch of others that we might have had before, but no longer fit this kind of, more focused niche that we're going to go for going forward. And then lastly, just, collaborating with, different partners, different celebrities, different designers, whatever it happens to be, to kind of build a bit more buzz, generate that interest and bring people into the store. So, and especially when those partnerships are exclusive, right? So if, if Louis Vuitton's got a new bag coming out or something, and it's, a super desirable bag, everybody wants it, they build a big buzz around it, but it's only available at, whichever particular department store, then great, you'll get more people into that department store, right? Because oftentimes people are going to that brand's website or to that brand store, and they've got better selection, better experience. You know, they have to sign up for the mailing list and all that good stuff, right? So they don't need, again, the middleman of the department store. So if you're giving them a reason to find, you know, their favorite brands and items that they can only get at that department store, then you might have some more success. So let's wrap things up, right? So some thoughts for, again, investors and leaders. I like to kind of break it out into both of those buckets, right? And a lot of these are going to be similar to the commercial real estate, you know, video that we did last week. If you haven't seen that one, you know, I'll point somewhere over here. You might be able to click it, or, you know, find it in the next in the list of the podcasts, or in the notes there. But really, again, look at companies that are embracing this new normal, right? Don't look at companies that are kind of saying, oh, this is, you know, this sucks and we're trying everything we can, but it's not working, or what have you. Like, if you're an investor, you don't want to hear that, right? You want to hear a company that's saying, hey, we're excited about this new normal. We're excited about where, you know, the younger generations are going, and we want to do what we can to align with that. And I think another point that that I didn't make in the previous video is that, you know, if you look at kind of leadership, the board, anybody who's making decisions for this, and they all look like kind of just the old guard, you know, that's probably a sign right there, right? Like, you want a company that's, you know, forward thinking enough to say, hey, we need to put some young, fresh faces at the forefront of this to help us solve these challenges, because the old way of doing business isn't going to work going forward, right? So we need to, again, be realistic about some of the harsh truths that the industry is facing, and put people who are, you know, come from that new world and are comfortable with that, and aren't going to shy away or be scared of what's to come. They want to run headfirst into, you know, what this new world can look like and how their business can be impactful in this new world. So, you know, if you're a department store and that's kind of your mindset, then that's the kind of company that I'd want to do business with, or that's the kind of company that I'd want to invest in, as opposed to one that's just like, oh man, our sales suck, we'll hope it gets better next year. We're trying a few things around the margins, but it's not really working. You know, I don't want to hear that. You know what I mean? I don't want to hear that. I want to hear how aggressive you're being in terms of experimenting, trying new things, being open-minded, being adaptable, you know, deepening your understanding of your customer, making some tough decisions about who to target, and, you know, who might not be your best fit anymore in this new world. You know, that's the type of stuff I want to hear. And again, same thing as last time. If you're a leader in this space, again, start with one or two. I think oftentimes, as much research as you might think you have on your market or your customer, I think it's a time now where, now more than ever, you kind of need to throw the old out, start fresh, get some fresh data, fresh research, a fresh understanding of who your customer is, and have a fresh kind of, you know, almost brainstorming or strategy session as to, okay, here's who we targeted before. Is that still the best customer for us? Is that still the best path forward for us? And if the answer is not a resounding yes, then start over. Start over, at least internally, and, you know, really look into, you know, who do we want to be going after? How do we want to find them? What's the best fit for them? What's the best brand? Like, you know, what do they want to see in our stores? What do they want to see from us? And how can we tailor and adapt our business in a way that's most receptive to that market? And it could be a complete departure from what we were doing before, and that's okay. You know, this is a new world, and we're excited to be, you know, leading in that. So again, let me leave it there. Again, if you like this, like, comment, subscribe. I really find this whole department store kind of space fascinating. I think we're gonna do a couple more videos on this. This was kind of a high level, but diving even deeper, breaking out some numbers and, you know, getting to some graphs and all that sort of thing. But I think this was kind of just a high level overview. Let me know what you guys want to see, and we'll see you guys next time. Appreciate it.